Alrighty, thank you everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining today's live demo. My name is Amy Boy Perez. I'm with Emphasis Stelligent, and I will be your demo host today. Before we dive into the presentation, I'm going to cover just a little bit of housekeeping. The demo is being recorded, and an on-demand link will be available and shared with you afterwards. Feel free to share the link with your colleagues. You can submit any questions you may have in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner. We will spend some time at the end of the demo to answer your questions. If we do not get to your question today, no worries. We are happy to follow up via email. And last but not least, if you are on Twitter or LinkedIn, please be sure to follow Stelligent for news, resources, and announcements. Now, today we have Dante and Desiree, who will be conducting a live demo of our newly AWS vetted consulting offer, Pipeline Factory. Dante is an AWS certified solutions architect with more than 20 years of experience building software delivery and operations systems. He brings a true mastery of the DevOps and SRE frameworks, resulting in solutions that lead product development and operation teams to the highest success levels. Dante is part of an all-star team that architects and develops solutions to accelerate, secure, and modernize software delivery operations. We also have Desiree, who is a part of that all-star team. Desiree is an associate DevOps automation engineer with 4 years of experience in software development and infrastructure as code, with a focus on DevOps automation in both on-premises and cloud environments. He is a native of the French-speaking country of Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, experienced with SDLC with a strong understanding and developed enterprise Java microservices with Spring as well as N-tier applications using Node and MongoDB. Desiree graduated from Western Governors University in Raleigh, North Carolina with a bachelor's degree in software development. And at this time, I'd like to hand the mic over to Dante and Desiree.
Thanks, Amy. So I'll start off a little bit by kind of talking about the Stelligent approach to DevOps and DevSecOps, particularly at scale, right? Because as your enterprise grows, the demands on deploying resources out to the cloud grow, you really need to address not just how you're going to deploy resources, but how you're going to build a process and a framework that's scalable and that allows you to begin standardizing on some of your processes. So we've taken this approach where we build these series of automation factories, and Stelligent has a particularly focused practice on building out automation on the DevOps side. So we've taken those years of experience and we've distilled it down to a series of frameworks that we call the factories. So you see a number of them here, and the idea is that you have different products, if you will, that you need to deploy out to AWS as infrastructure. So you can see here we've got vending capabilities for accounts, infrastructure, pipelines, and then secure environments as well as data pipelines. But the key to all of this, right, is that you can codify all that, right? So the beauty of AWS is that any configuration parameter, any integration between services, anything, an event accessed by another service, all of those things can be codified in the form of a CloudFormation template. And you can treat that template as a software product itself. And therefore you can do things like put it into a pipeline itself, do build testing, validation, and then publish that out for consumption by your dev and app teams as well. So we're going to look closer at Pipeline Factory today, but I'll kind of talk you through Account Factory real quick, just so you can get an idea of the factory model here, right? So we do use AWS Control Tower as a foundation there, right? But you can extend that further, right? And you can bundle in things like service control. So if you want to whitelist or blacklist particular services inside of an account, you can do that there, right? You can develop the structure behind your organizations. So that's your OUs, if you will, your SCPs, and how they're attached and how they layer in, the accounts themselves, and then the access control. So all of those things can be put into the form of a codified CloudFormation template. You can bundle those up with an account definition as well, and you can publish that as a product for consumption by your dev and app teams. So you can kind of see below, right, the dev and app teams can go into AWS Service Catalog. They can do things like select an account type, account product type, a pipeline product type, or even a fully secure environment product type, and they can deploy those at the push of a button in seconds, right? So the goal of most of these factories, number one, is speed and the ability to scale, right? So by defining and building these products ahead of time, you can take your DevOps and your DevSecOps processes, you can build them out ahead of time, you can create these various products as well, and let them consume them on demand and deploy them within minutes. So scale, the ability to scale when you've got hundreds of pipelines or potentially hundreds of thousands of accounts or pieces of infrastructure to deploy. This model gives you that capability as well. But number two, the other side of the coin here is it gives you the ability to improve the quality to an exceptional level, right? Because you can standardize and you can define all of these DevOps and DevSecOps processes and configurations, you can start to enforce the quality of how those are done, right? So, and we'll get into the pipeline factoring a little bit here, but let's say you've got some infrastructure and you want to ensure that the way that infrastructure is deployed is standardized and it meets the requirements of your organization, right? So you can build in things like security controls, cost controls, and other guardrails as part of that process and part of those templates. And the pipeline becomes the mechanism for the enforcement of those controls. So I can do things like do validation on infrastructure to ensure that they're deployed in the manner and at the standards of my enterprise as well. All right, so I'll dive deeper into the pipeline factory now. And again, it's the same model, right? So we're essentially building and codifying a CI/CD pipeline in the form of a piece of code. And in this instance, right, it's an AWS CloudFormation template. So you've got in front of you a very simple pipeline here, just 4 stages. But these are kind of the typical stages of a CI/CD pipeline, right? So source, build, test, and deploy. I'll start with source, right? So you're typically going to use AWS code commit inside of AWS and for version control. But if you think about the things that you would normally configure for that, right? So you're going to configure the repo itself, but also things like access controls. If you've got triggering events that you want to do when somebody commits code or they're doing a pull request, for example, you can codify all that inside of a CloudFormation template itself. In the build stage, we're using AWS code build, so you can think about the parameters there that you would typically configure, right? Code build essentially runs a small container, right? And you can codify how that container runs and executes the build of your software. You can codify how it does the packaging of the software and how it actually builds the artifact from the build process itself and how it's going to store it and grant access to that artifact as well, right? And again, all that can be codified in the form of a CloudFormation template. In your testing stage, AWS doesn't provide a native service for that, but typically you can run those tools either inside of a container or inside of a defined compute resource like EC2. But typically your testing tools will either be scripted or they'll have a definition template of their own as well. But again, the key there is that you can codify and define all of those testing stages inside of a piece of code as well. And then finally, the deploy stage, we're using the AWS code deploy service. And again, if you think about the things you configure there, right, the types of deployment, are you doing a blue-green? Are you doing a straightforward push to an artifact repository somewhere? And then you can configure the targets as well, right? So is this going to ECS? Is it going to a Lambda function somewhere? Or is it going to just run on a straightforward EC2 instance, for example? So all those things can be configured as parameters. And again, the key there is that all of that can be written out as a CloudFormation template. And then finally, you combine all 4 of those stages, right? And you can run those under AWS code pipeline. And again, you can configure the parameters. So you're going to configure which stages are run, the order of the stages, what's the pass-fail criteria for any of those stages. Do you need any manual approvals for example, before deployment? All of those types of things parameters can be configured inside of a CloudFormation template for code pipeline. So you bundle all those various templates together, and you can put them inside of a single template, and that becomes essentially your software product here, or your pipeline product, if you will, for the pipeline factory. And then you can take that template itself and store it inside of source control as well, right? So that gives you the same benefits you would get from source control across your other software products, right? I can now iterate on that. So if I've got a change to any of these stages, a typical one might be I've got a new new unit test that I want to include. I can simply come in, update the template, include that new unit test, and then I can commit that, validate it, and publish it out to service catalog for consumption with the new iteration. And I can push that very easily to all the users that are using the existing pipeline product as well. So it makes the process of iterating, updating your pipelines very simple and very simple to push those out to whoever is using those products already. All right, so and just like any other piece of code, right? We need a pipeline for that, right? So it gets a little meta, right? Because you're looking at a pipeline of pipelines right here. But we build this out inside of code pipeline as well. And you can see on the lower left, we're ingesting that pipeline product template, right? So we pull that in from code commit. And the first thing we're going to do is run it through a series of tests, right? So the first one we're going to do is validate the template. And this is simply static analysis at this point, right? So we use a tool that Stelligent built called CFN-NAG. It is open source if you want to check it out online. And all that tool does is open up the template and does a static analysis check of it. It's got about 200 to 300 rules out of the box that you can run, but you can also build custom rules as well. An example of a simple check you might do here is make sure that my pipeline includes a testing stage, and that testing stage includes unit and integration tests. And you can get as specific as you want with it, right? So you can actually define which unit tests you want to execute, which output parameters from those tests are acceptable to pass the product up. And you can define which integration test to run, or how, or the timing, or any number of parameters around your testing, for example. And the idea here is that this is kind of a preventative state, right? We want to make sure that no pipeline gets published and used without including the defined parameters for testing, for building, for packaging and deployment out to our ultimately to our customers, right? Now this gives you fast feedback here, right? We do this very early because we want that fast feedback for your DevOps engineers. So if there are any misconfigurations in that pipeline product, we'll give them very fast feedback, and they can correct the template to fix the error, and then push it back through the pipeline again. Now, if that checks out, we don't want to publish it just yet. We want to actually do a further set of tests. So we will actually take the template and deploy it to a temporary validation environment. And this is actually operating the pipeline in a live manner. So we can see not only does the template look correct, but we can see that the template deploys correctly. We can actually watch the pipeline execute the build and the test and the deployment stages, and we can validate that they do that. And we use that. We use the AWS config service to do that. So we can match the rules typically from our template validation stage inside of this operational validation stage, and we can see that those rules are processed and that the pipeline meets all of those standards in the operating environment itself. Now, if all that checks out, we will then publish the template out to AWS Service Catalog for consumption. So I'll back up a little bit here, right? And if you look at the lower half here, right, I've published a pipeline out to AWS Service Catalog. My dev and app teams can now simply come into the Service Catalog. They can browse from potentially dozens or even hundreds of possible pipeline products, and they can select that for deployment. So in our screen here, right, they've selected a pipeline product for a microservice, and that with the push of a button, they're able to deploy that out as well. So you can see there the ability to scale, right, because they can select that, and within minutes, they can deploy that pipeline. They don't have to put a ticket in. They don't have to wait hours for a DevOps team to respond to that ticket and create a pipeline for them. They can simply select a predefined, pre-validated, ready to go pipeline and deploy that on their own on demand. So from the dev and app team's point of view, it's a big time saver. it lets them get to coding their product quickly instead of having to worry about building out a pipeline for their application. Now, from the DevOps team point of view, right, it's also a big time saver. Instead of responding to a ticket after the fact, they can actually go ahead and build these patterns out and define these pipeline products ahead of time and have them ready to go. And speed is key there too, but the other half of the coin, right, is that they can build quality into those pipelines, right? So they're standardizing the process. They can standardize how the builds are done. They can define how the testing is done. They can define how the deployments are done. And they can do all of that ahead of time and set it to a high level of quality that the enterprise needs for that. So you get both the ability to do this fast, and you get an enforcement mechanism inside of the pipeline itself that enforces the enterprise's quality standards for that. Okay. And with that, I will hand it over to Desiree, and he will do a quick walkthrough and demo of the pipeline product, pipeline factory itself.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well, and I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the pipeline factory workflow. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and can you guys see it?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so if at any point you can't see the transition between screens, please let me know. Okay, so I'm in my VS Code here. This is the Pipeline Factory project folder, and we're going to focus on this CloudFormation template here, which is the deployment template, SC portfolio, with project.yaml file. And we're going to give it a stack name, which will be Pipeline Factory Dry Run. So I already went ahead and did the deployment because it can take quite some time, but I'm going to walk you through everything that's going on behind the scene. So once we have this, first of all, there's two ways of going about it. You can either deploy it using your terminal, or you can load up this CloudFormation template here via the AWS console in CloudFormation. So I have this command line here with the stack name, and once I press enter, I'll head over CloudFormation, and we will see our stack here that will be created. The status will be creating, and it will take a couple of minutes or two to complete. And also you have this nice green status here, create complete. You will head over to the pipeline here, the pipeline URL. Let me do that right now. Okay. So what's gonna happen here? We head to code pipeline, AWS code pipeline, and we have pipeline factory here that will be deployed with all the stages that Dante was talking about in the presentation. So we have first the source stage. We will check the code into the code commit into the source code repository. Then we have the template validation here, where we will use Stelligent CFN NAG to do the static analysis of the template. And also we can add another tool like CloudFormation Guard to add an extra layer of testing. So let me back it up a little bit. Once that's done, we have the testing stage here, which will test our CloudFormation template and for the infrastructure of our application. Here, I forgot to mention that the application that we'll be deploying is a simple Hello World kind of web application that will sit on a AWS ECS cluster. Okay, so this is what Pipeline Factory will package and run through a series of tests in the different stages here. We have template validation, then the testing using task-card, and then we will deploy it into the service catalog. So once this stage gets kicked in, we head over CloudFormation, where a CloudFormation stack will be will kick in as well. Name, pipeline factory, automated portfolio. This can be anything, but yeah, once we get to this stage here, which is the publish stage to the service catalog, this CloudFormation stack will be deployed, and once that's complete, you will head over the service catalog page where we will find our pipeline product for our ECS web app, Hello World web app. So we have here a validating product from the service catalog. We can click on it, and here is our ECS application that was just delivered by the pipeline factory. Okay, so we have we can configure the permissions here for group, role, user. I have here myself here as an administrator, as well as Hank. Or we can add another set of users that are authorized to provision this product. So once we have all this done, we can go to the product page, and here's our ECS web application, and we can click on it and start the provisioning process. So we click launch product, and we have a set of parameters here that we can change, or we can leave it as they are. And we have our nginx web server, web application here that will sit on the ECS service. And we can leave that. We can leave the application repository. This is the code commit repository for our ECS web application with all the files that will be seeded in it. We can leave it like this, or we can change it. And once we have all those parameters configured, we can click launch product. So once we click launch product, we will head back over CloudFormation console, and we will see a set of CloudFormation stack that will be deployed here. So this stack here, in this case, consists of our the infrastructure for our ECS web application. So all the infrastructure template were already checked out and verified and validated by Pipeline Factory, and now the deployment can go ahead. So this is the main stack here for our application. You can see here you have a template, and if you're familiar with ECS, you know that ECS consists of a bunch of components here. We have a VPC that's being provisioned. We have a service that will be provisioned for that ECS cluster. We also have a load balancer that will be provisioned, and we have the deployment pipeline, which is the CI/CD pipeline for our ECS web application here. And we also have the cluster for the ECS application. So this is a series of nested stack, from our ECS application that will be deployed. Okay, so once those are completed, we can head over, for example, the output, and you will see the pipeline for our ECS web application. So I'm going to click on that and check it out. So just like the pipeline factory, that is a pipeline, the ECS application is also a pipeline. The only difference is that the pipeline factory is the pipeline that spit out this pipeline from the AWS service catalog. So we provision this application, and we have this nice ready-made pipeline for it. So at first we have the source stage here and the build stage, which can be configured with the build spec file for the ECS web application, and this is fully customizable. We're gonna have a boilerplate here for our application where you will run your build script, as Dante was talking about. Same thing for the test. We have the build spec.yaml file that can be used to customize all your test script. You go back here, and we have the deploy stage, which is, in this case of our example application, we are deploying in ECS. So if you click detail here, you will see that the application has been deployed. We have one service running on ECS. we're not using Fargate, so we're using just EC2. We have one service, we have one task running and 0 pending task. All right. So let's head over our application. See CloudFormation. All right. So let's hit the load balancer URL, and this is our application. Right. So we will go back to the code commit for the application. Let's head over the code commit for the code commit repository for the application. So we go to AWS code commit, and this is our example application. This is the different file for the stages, for the build spec.yaml for different stages. We have our build stage here, YAML file here that is fully customizable, and you can add all your script, all your test script, all your build script, and we have the build spec test file boilerplate where you can have add all your test script for your application here. Okay, so and this is there's the HTML file that we can modify. You can clone this repository on your local machine, do your changes, and you will have another iteration of the pipeline that will update all the changes. And we can do that right now. Okay, let's for example, let's edit this file. Instead of hello AWS, let's do hello world, or the hello AWS world something. All right, and let's save it. So this can be anything. Okay, so let's test. Well.com. Oh no, yeah. All right. So let's see, update index page. Okay, let's commit the change. So you will normally do that on your local environment if you're part of a DevOps team or development team, and just update your changes. And so once this done, we can go to the pipeline for the ECS application, and you will see that the pipeline will be triggered. Now it takes a couple of seconds to to have some changes here. So this is pipeline factory, and that's the pipeline from our example application. Okay, so there you go. It has already kicked in. So the source stage has been completed. Now step over the build stage, where it will build the code for the web application. And then when it's done with the build stage, you will step over the test stage, where it will run all the test script for the web application as well. If we were to develop, let's say, for example, a Python app, or Java app, or we run all the unit tests here, all the integration tests, or you can even add another stage here. It's fully customizable. All right. So this will take a couple of seconds. All right, so now we have the unit test running. So again, this is where you will usually add your test script via the build spec.txt YAML file that I just showed you earlier. And you will have iteration after iteration, depending on the changes that you make in your source code. Since this example application sits on top of an ECS cluster, it takes quite a little bit but this is where you usually go ahead and grab some coffee and come back. But it shouldn't be too bad. So basically, we are expecting the change from our web page that I just showed you. Right now, it says Hello AWS. So we are expecting upon refreshing to have a Hello World AWS. Okay, so let's check back. While this is running, just a little recap, we have two pipelines, all right? We have the pipeline factory here, where all our infrastructure for our application runs in, and we have the application pipeline that was delivered by Pipeline Factory via the AWS service catalog here. So now it's in the deploy process. You will deploy in the ECS cluster and update all the update the container application running, and we will head over our page to see the change. Yeah, so basically, this is the workflow of the pipeline product. There you go. So the deploy has been completed. So we can head over to our web page and do a refresh, and you'll see Hello AWS World. So pretty neat. And we did that pretty rapidly. And that's the iteration and the workflow for the application product. So that's it. And with that, I'm going to hand over back to Amy for the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for all of that. While we wait for some questions to come in, I just want to remind you that you can actually enter questions in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner. All right, looks like we've got a couple of coming in now. All righty, so, excuse me, first question for Desiree and Dante. Are ECS applications the only applications supported by Pipeline Factory?
No, not at all, right? So anything that's supported by the AWS Code Deploy service can be included as well. So you can deploy direct to EC2 instances. You can deploy to an ECS or an ECS Fargate cluster, EKS cluster, and I believe Beanstalk is even supported in there. But you don't even have to use the Code Deploy service, right? So you can build your own automation around the deployment process, or you can use existing open source deployment tools as well, and bundle those in there. So really, there's no limitations on what target you could push an application to.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Dante. Desiree, I saw you unmute yourself as well. Did you have something to add?
No. I just second what Dante was saying. It's really customizable. I mean, support even serverless application as well. So I mean, ECS is not ECS is the example for the Pipeline Factory that we chose to feature, but no, it's not only supported by ECS.
All right, thanks for that. The second question we have is, how is compliance enforced?
Yeah, so if you think about when you're defining all of the configuration parameters for any of the stages, right? So particularly the build and the test stage in particular, you can build and codify controls inside of those pipeline stages, if you will, right? So let's say you have a tool that does a security scan or security related testing before you push your application out for deployment, right? So you can integrate that tool as a stage inside of your pipeline. You can codify how that tool is executed, what tests it runs, and how the output of that tool is handled, right? So you can codify all that. You can include that as part of the pipeline definition itself. And then when we validate that pipeline, we can include a control that ensures that those controls are listed and implemented and enforced as part of the pipeline process itself. And there is actually a full secure environment factory solution that's kind of an extension of this as well. It's a little beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but if you've got the need for high levels of compliance or high levels of security controls, we can extend it even further using that solution.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We do have a couple of other questions here. Next question is, what kind of infrastructure can be published by your pipeline factory?
You want to take that, Desiree?
Yeah, sure. We can basically publish a variety of infrastructure and service supported by AWS. Let's say if you have you can do your deployment on premises or in the cloud. Okay, so you can, let's say you have a serverless application. You can let's say, for example, you have an application that you want to migrate in the cloud. This is fully supported by Pipeline Factory. Pipeline Factory will help structure that application and move that deployment into the cloud. Like if it's, for example, if it's a serverless application, that you will have all the infrastructure basically that you need for that serverless application to be fully running into the cloud.
Great, thanks for that, Desiree. Next question is, can we try Pipeline Factory ourselves?
Not really. You can't. if you're interested in running Pipeline Factory in your environment, you can get in touch with Stelligent and Process Stelligent, and we will help you customize it to your environment and to your requirements. Dante, you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So I mean, the engagement model, building the pipeline factory itself is actually pretty straightforward, right? But a lot of the work comes in defining and building out those pipeline product templates, right? And those are heavily customizable to your needs. And we typically aim for 70 to 80% coverage of your pipeline needs, right? So that is to say, you're not going to build a pipeline product for every single pipeline type that you need, right? We typically aim for 70 to 80%, so that will save you a good bit of time in deployment and give you the ability to enforce control. And that 20 to 30%, they're kind of exceptions where you have different needs for a particular pipeline, but you do have a starting point, right? So you're not starting completely from scratch. You can pull one of the pipeline product templates and probably fork off from that and just make your small exception changes in there, right? So the idea is to give you as much coverage with those pipeline products as possible, and that's typically the largest part of the work from the engagement.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dante and Desiree. One last question here for today. We are also using ECS. However, many of our applications are based on Angular framework. Can we add a new framework to it ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, ECS was an example that we chose to feature with Pipeline Factory. You can basically choose to have your own framework, your own deployment model or your own architecture, and Pipeline Factory will definitely support it. Like Dante said earlier, ECS, EKS, serverless. This is the type of deployment that Pipeline Factory basically supports.
Anything else you'd like to add there, Dante, or?
I mean, just generally, right? So the whole this isn't a single product, right? It is a framework. So we will match it to your particular enterprise's needs, your tech stack, your deployment stack, all of that gets built into there, right? But the value prop here is that we're codifying all of those processes and tool stacks you use, and we're giving you a single workflow for how you develop those pipelines, how you deploy them, and how you operate those pipelines as well.
Alrighty, well, thank you for that. So with that, this concludes our demo today. Dante and Desiree, I'd like to thank you both so much for your time today. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Just a couple of reminders before I let you go. The on-demand link will be shared with you afterwards once it becomes available. You will also be receiving a post-demo email with some additional links to resources that we've scoped out that we think you'd be really interested in. Please feel free to browse those resources and share it amongst your colleagues as well. With that being said, have a great rest of the week. Thank you.